The Russo mansion stood tall and silent behind iron gates, its grand rooms mostly empty, its halls quiet except for the occasional footsteps of a few loyal staff members. For 11 years, this house had been more prison than home for its owner, Matteo Russo, one of the most feared and respected mafia bosses in the region. Matteo had once been known throughout the city not just for his power, but for his warmth, his laughter, and the deep love he carried for the woman who was supposed to become his wife. That was 11 years ago, since her tragic death. Connected directly to the dangerous enemies of his organization, Matteo had closed himself off entirely from the world, refusing close relationships, refusing vulnerability, refusing anything that might again expose him to such devastating loss. He ran his organization with cold efficiency, respected and feared by his men, yet increasingly isolated within the walls of his own home. His only companions were his loyal assistant, Enzo, and the quiet, empty rooms that once held so much promise for a different kind of life. Over recent months, an old injury from years earlier, a bullet wound near his spine that had never properly healed, began causing him increasing pain and mobility issues. Matteo, stubborn and unwilling to expose his vulnerability to unfamiliar doctors, had ignored the worsening condition for far too long, until even his own body finally forced him to acknowledge the seriousness of his declining health. "You need proper medical care," Enzo insisted one morning, standing firmly in Matteo's private study despite his boss's clear irritation. "Your condition is getting worse, not better. Ignoring it any longer could be extremely dangerous." "I don't need a doctor fussing over me constantly," Matteo replied coldly, shifting uncomfortably in his chair, pain evident despite his controlled expression. "Then at least allow a private nurse to help manage your condition here at home." Enzo pressed carefully. "Someone experienced, discreet, who understands the importance of privacy." Matteo sighed heavily, recognizing reluctantly that his stubborn pride was becoming increasingly unsustainable given his declining physical condition. "Fine," he said finally, though clear reluctance colored his tone. "But I want someone competent, professional, and understanding that this arrangement is strictly medical. Nothing more." Enzo nodded quickly, relieved by his boss's reluctant agreement, before arranging privately through a trusted medical agency for a skilled, discreet private nurse experienced in handling sensitive, high-profile clients. Within days, Camille Bennett arrived at the Russo mansion, a curvy, warm-hearted nurse known throughout private medical circles for her exceptional skill, patience, and genuine compassion toward even the most difficult patients. She had taken this position specifically because of its generous compensation, desperately needing financial stability after her own family's recent medical struggles had left her drowning in debt. Camille had no idea, walking through the mansion's imposing iron gates, exactly what kind of complicated, guarded man awaited her inside, nor the depth of isolation and emotional pain hidden carefully behind Matteo Russo's cold, controlled exterior. Enzo greeted her warmly at the entrance, guiding her carefully through the mansion's quiet, elegant hallways. "Mr. Russo can be difficult," Enzo warned gently. "He's been isolated for a long time, resistant to help of any kind. Please be patient with him." Camille nodded understandingly, professional determination evident in her calm, warm demeanor. "I've handled difficult patients before. I'm sure we'll manage just fine." Enzo led her toward Matteo's private study, knocking softly before opening the door carefully. Inside, Matteo sat rigidly behind his desk, his expression immediately cold and dismissive upon seeing the unfamiliar woman entering his private space. "Mr. Russo," Enzo said carefully, "this is Camille Bennett, the private nurse we discussed." Matteo's sharp eye studied Camille briefly, his expression clearly displeased. "I don't recall agreeing to have strangers wandering freely through my private study." Camille remained calm despite his obvious hostility, maintaining her professional composure. "Mr. Russo, I'm here simply to help manage your condition, ensure your comfort, and improve your mobility. I promise to respect your privacy completely." "I don't need your help," Matteo replied coldly, dismissing her entirely with a sharp wave of his hand. "Enzo insisted on this arrangement, not me. I'll tolerate your presence in this house, but I have no intention of allowing you into my private space unnecessarily." Camille studied him carefully, sensing clearly the deep-seated resistance and pain hidden beneath his cold, dismissive exterior. Yet she remained professionally calm, unwilling to let his hostility discourage her entirely. "Of course, Mr. Russo," she replied evenly. "I'll respect your boundaries. But please understand, I'm here to help you, whenever you're ready to accept it." Matteo's expression remained unreadable, though something flickered briefly behind his guarded, cold eyes. An emotion Camille couldn't quite identify, yet sensed clearly was far more complicated than simple irritation or dismissiveness. As Camille turned to leave the room, allowing Matteo his immediate privacy, she couldn't help but wonder exactly what painful, complicated history had led this powerful, guarded man to isolate himself so completely from the world for over a decade, unaware entirely that her patient, quiet persistence was about to challenge 11 years of carefully guarded solitude in ways neither of them yet fully understood. Camille was given a small guest room within the mansion, close enough to Matteo's quarters to respond quickly if needed, yet far enough to respect his obvious desire for distance. Her first few days passed in careful, cautious routine. She checked in briefly each morning, only to be met with the same cold dismissal from behind Matteo's closed study door. "Not today," Matteo would call out flatly, whenever she knocked politely to check on his condition. "I'm fine." Despite his constant refusals, Camille remained patient, understanding instinctively that his resistance stemmed from something far deeper than simple stubbornness. She spoke gently with Enzo, learning what she could about her difficult patient without prying too deeply into private matters. "He wasn't always like this," Enzo confided quietly one afternoon, as Camille organized medical supplies in a small side room. 11 years ago, Mr. Russo was different. Warmer, kinder, full of life. Something happened that changed him completely. "What happened?" Camille asked carefully, though she sensed Enzo's hesitation to share more. "It's not my story to tell," Enzo replied gently. "But please, be patient with him. Beneath all that coldness, there's still someone worth reaching." Camille nodded thoughtfully, determined more than ever to find a way past Matteo's carefully guarded walls, not simply for professional reasons, but because something about his obvious pain touched her own compassionate heart deeply. Days turned into a week, Camille continuing her gentle, persistent routine despite Matteo's unchanging resistance. She left small, thoughtful gestures outside his study door each morning, a warm cup of tea prepared exactly to his preference, learned quietly from kitchen staff, or a simple, handwritten note offering quiet encouragement without pressure. At first, Matteo ignored these small gestures entirely, his cold detachment remaining firmly in place. Yet Camille noticed subtle signs that he wasn't entirely unaffected. The teacup left empty near his door each morning, the small notes disappearing quietly from where she'd left them. One evening, nearly 2 weeks into her employment, Camille heard a soft, pained groan coming from Matteo's study late at night. Concerned, she knocked gently on the door. "Mr. Russo, are you all right?" Silence greeted her initially, followed by a quiet, strained voice. "I'm fine. Leave me be." But Camille's professional instincts, combined with genuine concern, urged her forward despite his refusal. "Please, Mr. Russo, if you're in pain, let me help. That's genuinely all I want to do." Another long silence stretched uncomfortably before the door finally opened slightly, revealing Matteo's pale, strained face, clear evidence of significant pain evident in his tense posture. "The pain's worse tonight," he admitted reluctantly, clearly uncomfortable revealing his vulnerability. "I didn't want to trouble anyone." "You're not troubling me at all," Camille said gently, stepping forward carefully. "Please, let me help you manage this properly." Matteo hesitated, clearly torn between his stubborn pride and the obvious relief he desperately needed. Finally, exhausted and genuinely suffering, he nodded reluctantly, allowing her entry into his private study for the first time. Camille worked quickly and efficiently, carefully examining his old injury, gently applying proper medical treatment to ease his discomfort. Matteo remained tense throughout, clearly unfamiliar and uncomfortable with allowing anyone this close, this vulnerable. "This injury has been neglected for far too long," Camille said softly, concentrating carefully on her careful treatment. You're lucky it hasn't caused more serious complications already. I don't have time to worry about old wounds, Matteo replied quietly, his voice unusually vulnerable despite his attempt at controlled indifference. Camille glanced up briefly, sensing clearly that his words carried deeper meaning beyond his physical injury alone. Sometimes, she said gently, ignoring wounds, whether physical or otherwise, only makes healing more difficult later. Matteo's eyes met hers directly for the first time, something raw and unguarded flickering briefly beneath his usual cold composure. You don't know anything about my wounds, Miss Bennet. You're right, Camille agreed softly, without judgment. I don't, but I'm here, willing to listen, whenever you're ready to share. Matteo remained silent, clearly unaccustomed to such genuine, patient kindness. Yet something in her calm, warm presence seemed to ease slightly the tension he had carried alone for so long. As Camille finished treating his injury carefully, packing away her supplies quietly, Matteo watched her closely, an unfamiliar warmth beginning to stir gently beneath his guarded exterior, an emotion he hadn't allowed himself to feel in over a decade. Thank you, he said quietly, genuine gratitude evident despite his usual reserved demeanor. Camille smiled softly, genuine warmth reflected clearly in her kind eyes. You're welcome, Mr. Russo. And please, call me Camille. Matteo nodded slowly, allowing himself, just slightly, to acknowledge the unexpected comfort her genuine care had provided. As Camille quietly left his study that evening, Matteo remained seated thoughtfully at his desk, staring silently at the closed door, sensing uneasily that this quiet, persistent woman had already begun the delicate process of breaking through 11 years of carefully guarded isolation, walls he wasn't entirely certain he was ready to let fall completely. After that night, something subtle shifted between Matteo and Camille. He no longer refused her daily check-ins outright, though he remained guarded, his conversations brief and careful. Still, small moments of genuine connection began appearing gradually, cracks slowly forming in the cold walls he had maintained for over a decade. Each morning, Camille arrived with quiet consistency, checking his injury, ensuring his medication schedule remained on track, and gently encouraging him towards simple physical therapy exercises to improve his mobility. Matteo, though still resistant at times, found himself increasingly comfortable in her steady, patient presence. You're improving, Camille noted one morning, carefully observing his increased range of motion during a simple stretching exercise. Slowly but steadily. Progress feels strange, Matteo admitted quietly, surprising himself with his own honesty. I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to hope for improvement. Camille studied him carefully, sensing an opening in his usual guarded demeanor. Can I ask you something, Matteo? He glanced up, mild surprise evident at her use of his first name, though he found he didn't mind it. Go ahead. Enzo mentioned that something happened 11 years ago, something that changed you significantly, Camille said gently, carefully avoiding pressuring him too directly. You don't have to share if you're not comfortable, but I wanted you to know. I'm willing to listen whenever you're ready. Matteo's expression grew distant, old pain flickering briefly across his controlled features. He remained silent momentarily, clearly wrestling internally with old memories carefully locked away for years. Her name was Isabella, he finally said quietly, his voice unusually vulnerable. We were supposed to be married. She was kind, gentle, everything good in a world that often felt cold and dangerous. Camille remained silent, sensing the depth of his pain, allowing him space to continue at his own pace. She died because of my enemies, Matteo continued, his voice tightening with old grief and controlled anger. They targeted her to hurt me, to weaken my resolve. I couldn't protect her, despite all my power, all my supposed strength. I'm so sorry, Matteo, Camille said softly, genuine compassion evident in her gentle voice. That kind of loss, especially caused so senselessly, must have been devastating. After that, Matteo said quietly, I closed myself off completely. I couldn't risk loving anyone again, couldn't risk losing someone else, because of the dangerous world I live in. Camille listened carefully, her heart aching gently for the pain he had silently carried for so long. That's completely understandable, Matteo. But isolating yourself completely, refusing any connection at all, that's its own kind of loss too. Mateo studied her carefully, something shifting subtly in his guarded eyes, an unfamiliar vulnerability surfacing gently beneath his usual controlled composure. Perhaps, he admitted quietly, but the fear of losing someone else that way again is still very real. Before Camille could respond further, a sudden, loud crash echoed from downstairs, followed immediately by shouting voices and hurried footsteps. Mateo's expression instantly hardened, years of dangerous experience taking over immediately. "Stay here," he ordered firmly, quickly standing despite his lingering pain, moving toward the door. Camille's heart raced with sudden anxiety. "What's happening?" "Trouble," Mateo replied simply, his tone serious and alert. "Lock this door behind me." Before Camille could argue further, Mateo moved quickly into the hallway, joining Enzo and several security men rushing toward the mansion's main entrance. Gunfire erupted suddenly, shattering the tense silence of the mansion, chaos breaking out as intruders attempted a direct, unexpected assault on Mateo's heavily guarded home. Camille remained anxiously locked in Mateo's study, her heart pounding fearfully as she listened to the tense chaos unfolding just beyond the door. Minutes passed in tense uncertainty until finally, the sound of gunfire began slowing, followed by tense, urgent voices confirming the intruders had been repelled. Mateo returned shortly after, visibly tense, though uninjured, his expression grim, with barely controlled anger. "Are you all right?" he asked immediately, checking carefully for any sign of distress. "I'm fine," Camille assured him, relief evident in her voice. "But what just happened? Who would attack your home directly?" Mateo's jaw tightened, old fears resurfacing painfully. "A rival organization, sensing weakness after years of my isolation. They believe my prolonged solitude has left me vulnerable, an opportunity to challenge my authority directly." Camille studied him carefully, sensing the complicated mixture of old grief and renewed danger evident clearly in his troubled expression. "Mateo, this danger, it's connected to what happened to Isabella, isn't it?" Mateo nodded grimly, old pain and fresh anxiety mingling clearly in his guarded eyes. "Exactly the same danger that took her from me. And now, it threatens everyone close to me once again, including you." Camille felt a chill of genuine fear settle deep within her chest, yet also felt a growing, undeniable connection to this complicated, wounded man standing anxiously before her. She realized clearly, in that tense, uncertain moment, that 11 years of careful isolation were rapidly colliding with new danger, new vulnerability, and unexpectedly, new hope for genuine connection and healing. Part 4. Old Wounds, New Feelings, 1,000 Words. The mansion buzzed with tense activity following the attack, security teams sweeping every room, Enzo coordinating urgently with the remaining guards to reinforce the property's defenses. Mateo stood rigidly in the hallway, his expression a mixture of controlled fury and old, resurfacing grief. 2 intruders were captured, Enzo reported, approaching cautiously. "They're being questioned now. Preliminary information suggests they're connected to the Falcone family." Mateo's jaw tightened at the familiar name, the same organization responsible for Isabella's death. "It appears so," Enzo confirmed grimly. "They've apparently grown bold again, sensing an opportunity after years of your withdrawal from active involvement in organizational conflicts." Mateo's fists clenched at his sides, old memories and fresh anger colliding painfully within him. "I won't allow them to repeat history," he said firmly, though his voice carried an undertone of genuine fear. Camille, standing quietly nearby, studied him carefully, sensing the depth of his internal struggle. "Mateo," she said gently, once Enzo had stepped away to continue his security arrangements, "are you all right?" Mateo turned to her, his usual guarded composure faltering slightly under the weight of resurfacing grief and fear. "I swore I would never allow myself to be vulnerable to this kind of danger again," he admitted quietly. "Yet here we are, history threatening to repeat itself." "This isn't your fault, Mateo," Camille said firmly, though gently. "You didn't invite this danger. You've simply become genuinely connected to people again, which apparently threatens those who wish to see you weakened. Mateo studied her carefully, something vulnerable and raw flickering behind his controlled exterior. That's exactly what frightens me most, Camille. Becoming close to you, allowing myself to feel again after 11 years of careful isolation, only to risk losing you the same way I lost Isabella. Camille's heart ached gently at his honest admission, though she remained firm, refusing to let his fear dictate their growing connection. Mateo, isolating yourself completely didn't protect you from pain. It simply delayed genuine happiness and connection. That's not truly living, that's merely surviving. Mateo's expression grew troubled, torn visibly between his genuine feelings for Camille and his deep-seated fear of repeating painful history. I care for you deeply, Camille, more than I've allowed myself to feel in over a decade, but I can't risk your safety, your life, simply because I've allowed myself to feel again. Mateo, Camille began, gently reaching to touch his arm, but Mateo stepped back, his expression hardening with sudden, protective resolve. I think it's best if you leave, Camille. Immediately. I'll ensure you're compensated fully, but I can't allow you to remain here, exposed to this danger any further. Camille stared at him, shock and hurt evident in her expression. You're pushing me away, after everything we've shared these past weeks. I'm protecting you, Mateo said firmly, though clear pain was evident beneath his controlled tone, exactly as I should have protected Isabella, but failed to do. This isn't protection, Mateo, Camille argued, refusing to back down despite his obvious distress. This is fear controlling your decisions, just as it has for the past 11 years. Mateo's expression remained resolute, though clear inner turmoil was evident beneath his controlled exterior. Please, Camille, just go. I can't lose you the way I lost her. Camille studied him carefully, recognizing clearly the depth of fear driving his painful decision, yet unwilling to simply accept his dismissal without a fight. Mateo, I understand your fear, truly I do. But running from genuine connection, genuine happiness, isn't the answer. It never has been. Mateo remained silent, clearly torn internally, though his guarded expression didn't waver. Please, he repeated quietly. Just go, Camille, for your own safety. Reluctantly, though deeply hurt by his insistence, Camille nodded slowly, understanding clearly that pushing him further in this vulnerable, emotional moment might only deepen his resistance. All right, Mateo, I'll go for now. But please, understand this isn't truly protection, it's fear. And fear like this, if left unchecked, will only continue isolating you from genuine happiness. As Camille turned to leave, gathering her belongings quietly, Mateo watched her go, his heart heavy with conflicting emotions, fear and genuine longing clashing painfully within him. He knew deep down that Camille's words carried significant truth, yet his deep-seated fear of losing another person he genuinely cared for remained powerfully persuasive, urging him toward isolation once again. That evening, alone once more in his quiet, empty study, Mateo sat quietly, staring at the closed door through which Camille had departed, the silence around him feeling suddenly heavier, more suffocating than it had in years. Meanwhile, Camille, deeply hurt yet unwilling to entirely give up on the genuine connection she had found with Mateo, sat quietly in her own small apartment, considering carefully her next move. She understood clearly that Mateo's fear-driven isolation was deeply rooted in genuine trauma, yet she also recognized clearly that his happiness, his genuine healing, depended entirely on confronting that fear directly, rather than allowing it to control his life indefinitely. Determined and resolute despite her hurt feelings, Camille made a quiet, firm decision that evening. She wouldn't simply walk away permanently. She intended to find a way to help Mateo confront his fears directly, to prove that genuine happiness and safety could coexist, regardless of the dangerous world he inhabited. Unbeknownst to either of them, the danger from the Falcone family was far from resolved, quietly regrouping and planning their next dangerous move, a move that would soon force both Mateo and Camille into a confrontation neither could avoid, testing decisively whether 11 years of careful isolation could truly be overcome by genuine courage, honesty, and unwavering love. 3 days passed since Camille left the mansion, each one feeling unbearably long and hollow for both of them. Mateo threw himself into managing the growing threat from the Falcone family, yet found his concentration constantly interrupted by thoughts of Camille, her genuine warmth, her patient kindness, and the harsh, fearful way he had dismissed her. Camille, meanwhile, struggled with her own persistent worry, unable to shake the feeling that Mateo remained in serious danger, both from the resurfacing threat and from his own deep-seated fear of genuine connection. Despite her hurt feelings, she found herself unable to simply move on, her concern for his well-being outweighing her wounded pride. On the fourth morning, Camille made a determined decision. She drove back to the Russo mansion, her resolve steady despite the anxious flutter in her chest. Enzo greeted her at the gate, clear surprise evident on his face. "Miss Bennett," he said, "Mr. Russo didn't mention you were returning." "He doesn't know," Camille admitted honestly, "but I need to speak with him directly. Please, Enzo, this is important." Enzo studied her carefully before nodding, sensing genuine urgency in her determined expression. "He's in his study. Follow me." Camille marched purposefully through the familiar hallways, her heart pounding with a mixture of nervousness and resolve. She knocked firmly on Mateo's study door before entering, without waiting for permission. Mateo looked up, clear shock evident on his face at her unexpected return. "Camille, what are you doing here? It's not safe." "I don't care about safety right now," Camille interrupted firmly, closing the door behind her. "I care about you continuing to hide behind fear, using danger as an excuse to push away anyone who might actually make you happy." Mateo stood slowly, clearly caught off guard by her direct, unwavering confrontation. "Camille, I told you, I can't risk." "You can't risk losing someone you care about," Camille finished for him, her voice firm but gentle. "I understand that fear, Mateo. Truly I do. But hiding from it for 11 years hasn't brought you peace. It's only brought you loneliness." Mateo remained silent, clearly wrestling internally with her direct, honest words. "What do you want me to do, Camille? Pretend the danger surrounding me isn't real?" "No," Camille replied firmly. "I want you to face it directly, instead of running from genuine happiness because of it. I want you to fight for what matters, rather than isolating yourself out of fear." Before Mateo could respond further, Enzo burst through the door urgently, his expression alarmed. "Sir, we have a serious problem. The Falcone family has made a direct move. They've taken hostages from a legitimate business we operate downtown, demanding your personal presence in exchange for their release." Mateo's expression hardened instantly, protective anger replacing his earlier vulnerability. "How many hostages?" "3," Enzo confirmed grimly. "And sir, they specifically mentioned Camille by name, aware clearly that she recently returned to the mansion." Camille's breath caught sharply, fear flooding through her chest. "They know I'm here. It appears the Falcone family has been closely monitoring the mansion," Enzo said seriously. "They're using this hostage situation specifically as bait, hoping to lure you out personally, Mr. Russo, while simultaneously targeting Camille directly." Mateo's jaw tightened with fierce, protective resolve. "This ends now. I won't allow them to use innocent lives, or Camille's safety, as leverage any longer." "Sir, this could be an elaborate trap," Enzo warned cautiously. "They might be anticipating your direct involvement, planning a coordinated attack." "I'm aware of the risk," Mateo replied firmly. "But I won't sacrifice innocent hostages, nor will I allow Camille to remain in danger any further." Camille stepped forward determinedly. "I want to help however I can, Mateo. I won't simply hide away while you risk everything." Mateo turned to her, torn between his protective instincts and genuine respect for her courageous determination. "Camille, this is exactly the danger I feared. I can't allow you to be directly involved." "I'm already involved," Camille argued firmly. "Whether you want me to be or not. Running from this fear together is far better than facing it entirely alone, Mateo." Mateo studied her carefully, recognizing clearly the truth and courage behind her determined words. Finally, he nodded reluctantly, understanding that isolating her further would serve no genuine purpose. "All right, but please, stay close to Enzo and my security team at all times. Camille nodded firmly, relief evident despite the serious danger ahead. Let's end this, Matteo. Together. Within the hour, Matteo organized a careful, decisive plan to confront the Falcone family directly, aiming to rescue the hostages safely while neutralizing the ongoing threat permanently. As they prepared to depart, tension and uncertainty hanging heavily in the air, Matteo paused briefly, turning to Camille with genuine sincerity evident in his gaze. Camille, regardless of what happens today, I need you to know something important, he said quietly. These past weeks with you have shown me exactly what I've been missing, what I've been too afraid to embrace fully. Whatever happens, I don't regret allowing myself to feel again, to genuinely care for you. Camille's eyes softened with emotion, genuine warmth evident despite the danger looming ahead. We'll get through this together, Matteo. And afterward, we'll finally have the chance to build something real, without fear controlling our choices any longer. With renewed determination and courage, Matteo and Camille prepared together to confront the dangerous threat directly, unaware exactly how intense and dangerous the coming confrontation with the Falcone family would truly become, a confrontation that would ultimately test everything they had both fought so hard to protect. The warehouse where the Falcone family held their hostages stood quiet and tense under the evening sky, Matteo's men positioning carefully around the perimeter, awaiting his signal. Matteo insisted Camille remain safely behind, positioned securely with Enzo and additional guards a safe distance away, despite her earlier insistence on helping directly. Stay here, Matteo said firmly, meeting her eyes with genuine concern. Please, Camille, let me handle this confrontation directly. I need to know you're safe. Camille nodded reluctantly, understanding the necessity despite her own anxious desire to help further. Be careful, Matteo. Come back to me safely. Matteo squeezed her hand gently before moving forward with his men, entering the warehouse cautiously, weapon ready, his expression calm yet resolute despite the serious danger ahead. Inside, the Falcone family's leader, Salvatore, stood confidently near the captured hostages, clearly anticipating Matteo's arrival. Russo, he called out coldly. I wondered how long it would take you to finally step out of hiding. Let the hostages go, Salvatore, Matteo demanded firmly, his voice steady despite the tension evident in his controlled posture. This conflict is between us, not innocent bystanders. Perhaps, Salvatore replied, but innocent bystanders make excellent leverage, don't they? Just as your beloved Isabella once did. Matteo's jaw clenched sharply at the painful mention of Isabella's name, though he forced himself to remain composed, refusing to let old grief compromise his focus. You're going to regret bringing her into this. Salvatore smirked coldly. We'll see about that. Suddenly, gunfire erupted as Matteo's men moved swiftly into action, engaging Salvatore's forces directly. Chaos broke out within the warehouse, Matteo carefully maneuvering to protect the hostages while confronting Salvatore's men directly. Meanwhile, outside, Camille waited anxiously, her heart pounding with fear for Matteo's safety. Suddenly, she noticed movement nearby. Two men from Salvatore's organization attempting to approach her position secretly, clearly intending to use her as additional leverage against Matteo. Enzo spotted the danger immediately, quickly alerting nearby security. Protect Camille. Now. Camille's heart raced with sudden terror as the men moved swiftly toward her, but Matteo's security team reacted decisively, intercepting the attackers before they could reach her. A brief, intense struggle following swiftly. Inside the warehouse, Matteo, hearing the commotion outside through his earpiece, felt a surge of protective fear and fierce determination. Finish this quickly, he ordered his men firmly, moving decisively toward Salvatore directly. Salvatore, realizing his plan to use Camille as leverage had failed, grew desperate, raising his weapon threateningly. But Matteo moved swiftly, disarming him decisively before he could act further, ending the confrontation firmly and permanently. It's over, Salvatore, Matteo said coldly, his men quickly securing the defeated rival leader. Your organization's threat against me, against everyone I care about, ends today. With Salvatore captured and hostages safely freed, Matteo rushed anxiously outside, relief flooding through him instantly upon seeing Camille safe, though visibly shaken from the attempted attack. "Camille," he called urgently, rushing quickly to her side. "I'm okay," Camille reassured him, though her voice trembled slightly from the residual fear of the encounter. "Your men arrived just in time." Mateo pulled her gently into a protective embrace, relief and genuine affection evident clearly in his tired eyes. "I was terrified something might happen to you," he admitted softly. "I couldn't bear to lose you the way I lost Isabella." Camille looked up at him, warmth and understanding evident in her gentle gaze. "But you didn't lose me, Mateo. We're both safe now, and this threat is finally over." Mateo nodded, relief settling deeply within him as he realized clearly the 11 years of fear-driven isolation had finally come to a decisive, meaningful end. "Camille, these past weeks with you, they've shown me exactly what I've been missing, what genuine happiness truly feels like. I don't want to hide from that any longer." Camille smiled softly, genuine happiness evident despite the intensity of the day's events. "Then don't, Mateo. Let's build something real together, without fear controlling our choices any further." In the weeks that followed, life gradually returned to peaceful stability. With the Falcone family's immediate threat neutralized completely, Mateo slowly began reconnecting more openly with his own organization, his confidence and authority restored fully, no longer overshadowed by fear or isolation. Camille continued caring for him diligently, though their relationship deepened steadily beyond simple medical necessity into genuine, meaningful partnership built on mutual respect, understanding, and unwavering love. One quiet evening, sitting together comfortably on the mansion's peaceful terrace, watching the sunset paint the sky in warm, gentle colors, Camille rested her head gently against Mateo's shoulder. "Do you ever think about how different your life might have been if you hadn't finally let me in?" she asked softly. Mateo smiled warmly, pulling her closer. "Every day. 11 years of silence and isolation, and it took your patience, your genuine kindness, to finally help me find my way back to real happiness." Camila smiled contentedly, genuine warmth and security, finally replacing years of loneliness and isolation. "I'm grateful you finally let me in, Mateo. Grateful we found each other, despite everything." Mateo gently kissed the top of her head, holding her closely as peaceful contentment settled comfortably around them both. "And I intend to spend the rest of my life ensuring you never regret that choice, Camille. Not for a single moment." From that day forward, Mateo Russo was no longer known simply as the isolated, feared Mafia boss who had shut himself away from the world for 11 long years, but privately, quietly, as a man who had finally found genuine happiness, security, and love, all because a compassionate, patient nurse had refused to give up on him, gently guiding him back toward the life and love he thought he'd lost forever.